to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. Participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good evening. I'm Darrell Seasals, Chair of the Planning Commission. Welcome. Also present this evening is Jansen Herr. To my left, Randy Patterson. Also, the other commission members via Zoom are Sarah Ryder and Jason Dagan. I believe they're the only ones visually showing right now. So the 5 members are present. Also this evening, Colin Seasals, our Director of Planning and Zoning Officer, and Lee on the keyboard. With that, and I got away from both so you can hear. First item will be Pledge Allegiance. If you'll stand and join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is approval of the minutes of the April 9th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Having read those, any comments, revisions?
My only comment is the title says April 10th and the paragraph says April 9th.
Yeah, and it is April 9th.
Well, thank you. Other than that, no comments.
Any no others? I have a couple, if you will. Under new business, first item A, the second sentence, they're proposing to demolish an existing commercial green. Actually, it was multiple. I believe it was either 3 or 4 existing. So I take out the N, existing commercial greenhouses, make it plural. And the next paragraph, it's actually DM/A, minor detail. And the end of that, the Lancaster County letter was dated November 30th, not the 11th. Okay. Comments? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the April 9th Planning Commission minutes. I'm sorry, we have a motion by Randy. Do I have a second? Jansen? Favor? Jansen. Sarah? Jason?
Sure.
Thank you. Unanimous, approved by all. Thank you. Next item is old business, none this evening. So we'll move on to new business. First item is plan number 2023-32. Lancaster LLC, Rockville Parcel 2, Land Development Plan. If you would come forward, identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Chris Vanarchik with RGS Associates Land Planning Firm in Lancaster. Here this evening, really excited about the project we have before you. It's been a long time in the making. We were before you probably back in 2022 into 2023, where we looked at the master planning process for the Rockville Center. So the purpose of why we're here tonight is that kind of first introduction of residential units in the master plan implementation out on the Rockville site. So we've submitted a land development plan for what we call parcel 2 of the overall roughly 65 acres of the project. This application is specific to about 7 acres on the west side of South Willowdale Drive. It's within the C3 Regional Commercial Zoning District. The existing site out there today is about 38,000 square feet of commercial space. You may recall when there was plan to try to move something forward with a redevelopment of the site. There was a portion of the building on that parcel already taken down, so that the actual existing commercial area that was on that site was about twice that, or 76,000 square feet. So in the big plan, the idea was to remove that commercial space and replace it with residential. So that's again what this plan does. The idea is the commercial that in that space or was in that phase would be redistributed across the remaining vacancies on the property to again reinvigorate the commercial spaces on the property in addition to the residential units. So if it's possible to get, I don't know if we can get a copy of the plan up on the board.
I'd say yes.
Well, what that will show is what we're looking at is the introduction of 4 separate multi-family apartment buildings. Each of those buildings would contain 32 dwelling units. And what we're specifically looking at here up on the screen would be on the left or west side of South Willowdale Drive, those 4 buildings shown there, and the associated parking. This would be within the commercial redevelopment overlay district, utilizing the underutilized Rockville Center shopping center portion of the ordinance. As far as quickly walking through the plan, the access in the north coming into the project site utilizes the existing driveway into I'll call it the main parking area. And then on the southern end, we sweep out into South Willowdale Drive for a secondary connection between those spaces and access. The great thing about this plan is, as you know out there right now, it's practically wall to wall. So the maximum impervious coverage for this particular zone, this lot, is 70%. The existing condition, however, exceeded that. It's about 80%. With our proposed plan, we dropped that way back to about 50%. So it's an introduction of green space to offset that paved area, which helps us out extraordinarily for stormwater management, obviously, because we're cutting back so much impervious. We will have, obviously, conveyance that we look at to manage the stormwater and direct that where it needs to go. We supplied the NPDS permit application to the Conservation District. That's already been approved, so we actually already have obtained the NPDS permit for the project. It would be served by public sewer and water through the Sewer Authority and the City of Lancaster. Capacity is available for both to serve the project. And we also looked at traffic. People always ask about traffic with this. Well, you may recall back in the master plan stage, we looked at it across the entire project within the underutilized shopping center code. It has provisions in there for you to compare the existing traffic that would have been generated in the Rockville Center at its heyday, let's say, compared to what we're proposing now. And we fall within those thresholds. That's all been supplied to the township. So really, again, we're excited to hopefully move forward with this. Our objective is to seek approval recommendation on the waivers that have been presented as part of the application, and then the plan itself, so we can move on to the Board of Supervisors. I did have in our application some modifications. One was preliminary plan application, and that's really given the scope of the project. I'm happy to walk in detail through our justification for that. But really, we're not proposing any new streets. We're not doing any subdivision as part of this parcel. Parcel exists today. So really a separate prelim and final plan is a duplicate plan. Final plan scale, that's really just about presentation, the size of the project in relation to a standard 24 by 36 sheet. So we asked for a modification of that. And then there are three modifications I would say that are not uncommon when you're doing a redevelopment. One is sidewalks along the existing streets. If we were to follow the code, you'd have the standard sidewalk and curb along, specifically Rockvale Road to the south. We worked this out in the master plan. What the idea was instead of a conventional straight concrete sidewalk, you can see we're using the concepts from your approved streetscape plan to introduce that multimodal path that comes down from the north, comes along that western edge behind the apartments, and then loops over towards the east along with Rockvale Road. So essentially that becomes your pedestrian movement along Rockvale Road. The next one was parking compounds, sidewalks on parking compounds. So we show sidewalks on the western side of the parking compounds between the buildings and the parking. Logically, that's where you want them. People are going to exit their vehicles and move towards those buildings. So we looked at not having sidewalk on the eastern side. And really it's because in my opinion, I believe it would be redundant. I don't think anyone would use it because again, they're working their way toward the building and then 20 so feet away and the sidewalk that runs up and down South Willowdale for South Movement. And then the final one was grass strip. That's kind of tied similar to my explanation of the sidewalks along Rockvale Road is again, we don't have technically the requirement met for the grass strip because instead of a straight concrete sidewalk, we have a meandering multimodal path. So that's just a quick overview. Again, happy to go through those in detail if you have questions. And I guess lastly, just stating that we have the latest review letter from your township engineer and a review letter from the county, and we don't have a satisfying. Have to be the letter from your township engineer supported granting all the modification requests. And also obviously recommended that it would be okay to be here tonight. So that's a quick overview. You have to try to answer any questions you may have.
One, so the walking path, in the northeast corner, northwest corner, does 90-degree angle and then stops. Where will that continue?
Yeah, that will continue. So that'll be consistent with what was at least conceptualized in the master plan, which again was taken straight from your streetscape plan. When we were preparing that master plan, there was some dialogue back and forth with staff to make sure it follows that alignment that was conceived through your streetscape plan. Now, will it be exactly as shown? To be determined. If there are some features out there we want to avoid for obvious reasons, whether it's utilities or structures, we'll do that. But for the most part, the idea is, to your question, is we're ending it there right now as far as parcel 2 goes, but then we'll look at extending that up to connect to Route 30. And we evaluate if that makes sense now, or that's something we certainly know as part of the bigger plan. But as right now, we're just focused on parcel 2.
Expectation walk from the path to the retail building. You have it going north, but you don't show any crosswalk pattern. Where I'm
And the same location that
just come
corner.
south a little bit.
You come across the drive south.
Here?
Yes.
I mean, so I don't think we have any objection to do that. And I don't know if maybe it just didn't come through on a rendering, because I do see something there. It looks like it might be a cross section. That's existing?
Yeah,
Oh,
it'll be redone, but yeah.
that needs to be maintained. Certainly look at that.
I do see it. I just haven't blown.
It's kind of in the air. It's not as obvious as your other crosswalk.
Yeah.
Parcel 2 to the east. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question I have is, the sidewalk extension going from effectively the parking area between buildings M and N.
Yeah.
And there is a short one going to an L and M to the parking lot. Would you consider adding an extension to go to that multi-use pathway? I'm just thinking that if you're in the northern section of building M and you need to take your trash out to the dumpster, you would basically have to go the whole way out around L or cut through the grass.
You're thinking here.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I mean, just can look at that. I think we try to, as best we can, pay attention to where people might walk. A lot of times we joke around and say you kind of just follow the worn grass path and put a concrete path in afterwards. But the idea behind this one would make more sense if you saw the whole master plan. It was just an axial relationship to the central green. But your point's well taken. That might make sense to provide that accessibility to the trash. I mean, yeah, I guess like you said, it could go around there, but maybe it's not such a bad idea to give them that ability to go around the back.
There probably will be a path there one way or another.
Look at the same thing. I didn't know if they would drive from N and O to go get their mail and take their trash at the same time. Since they're side by side, the mailboxes, but
Yeah,
there will be those that walk. Yeah.
sure. And we hope they do.
So all the trash for all four buildings goes into that same location, or is there trash inside each of the four buildings?
That was the idea.
So I need to go to that,
We
okay.
include like, compactors and whatnot.
So it's a I was just thinking quantity of trash with a normal dumpster. Okay,
So you just collect it in your unit and there's not a place in the building to, not a planned place in the building to dispose of. Uh, February 9th, you mentioned the waivers and modifications. There were three zoning items, which you'll have to work out with the zoning officer. And, you know,
Yeah, I think it's providing some clarification on the site data zoning summary, so we don't have a problem with that.
you know, and here's your parking, you're doing like 1.5 spaces per unit roughly.
Yeah, we utilize the reduction for the public transportation access.
And those are contingent on the supervisors. Planning commission doesn't, but they'll have to give you that yay or nay.
In that same February 9th letter, under the subdivision land development, sorry, under the stormwater management. The storm drainage easement, I believe that's existing. I believe it's existing on the site.
We looked at that, I think that was a leftover from the early concept, so it was a drafting thing, so we've addressed that in our revisions.
The subdivision land development comment for regard to the right of way and cartway width for Rockvale Road. Indication there is that the 60-foot right of way was identified, but the cartway width wasn't, and the drafting appears to be narrower than the 36 or 18 feet to half. If things would have to be wide to meet the cartway width for the collector street, local collector street, or a waiver request. Deferral.
Where no problem providing the right of way, because it makes sense, but if I don't want to misspeak, but I thought it was the township's desire not to widen it. I think it was the idea not to make it a racetrack.
we'll follow up with that with you. So,
Yeah, you'll need to look at it and just verify the actual width of it now. And traditionally, we may not require the widening for the reason you mentioned and others, but it might not be a waiver, but a deferral. That if in the future it makes sense to widen it, that, you know, it would fall back on the landowner too.
Just for clarification, Darrell, I measured and it's 154 inches from center line of roadway to the curb existing now.
And that equals how many feet? No. 12 times 18 is. And I'm 18, 180, 154, isn't it? So it is narrow. So yeah, work with staff before you get to the supervisors to see what would be how it would be addressed. Yeah. We did have two other letters, one from Brogan Auto Engineering. You talked about the transportation. Has the transportation impact study been resolved or done? They reviewed the documents for
Yeah, that one, the date of that letter?
March 8th. March 8th. from Grove Miller Engineering. Then, here. There's documentation prepared by the traffic planning and designing. And they concurred that,
I don't know if I've seen this letter because it talks about asking for a TIS. Again, we supplied as part of the master planning process and provided an updated letter. It was October 12th, 2023, and indicating compliance with the traffic related to the underutilized shopping center.
appears they reviewed what was submitted, the way it was submitted, and decided that they concurred that you didn't have to do that, but they're saying a TIS would be, in their opinion, required, so.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of, I guess we could talk about that. That's inconsistent with what the ordinance states. That's why I went through the process of the traffic analysis, the trip generation, to compare that to the shopping center at its peak usage.
Yeah.
So I think it negates the need, in my understanding, is of the TIS, but we can work that out with staff.
Okay, look, yeah, they make a reference to section 516 of Sally. That you also got county review letter of November 30th. Okay. And do you have any issue with the items?
No. Yeah, I think the things they pointed out there, private street agreement, because South Willowdale Drive is a private street. That's understood. That agreement, I believe, is already placed. It would just be a matter of, because I don't know if anything can change with ownership now that it's under new ownership, but I would imagine it just goes with any successor or assign. And then, yeah, tree protection zone during construction, and then a lighting plan, which we already have that now, so.
Street agreement, the solicitor, township solicitor would have to review. Concur, it's, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that great alternative. Again, I mean, it exists today. It's just a right based property. Not an attorney, but just run with it.
Right. Any of those legal, the solicitor, so. Any other comments from planning committee? Any comments from the general public? Reading none. Corruption. To the plan 2023-32 Rockville Parcel 2 Land Development Plan.
Planning Commission recommends approval to the Board of Supervisors of 2023-32. See, Rockville 2 Land Development Plan, conditioned by the February 9th letter of the Miller Associates. And that the waiver of modification request as stated in that letter would be granted.
I second.
I missed one. You meant your second. The township is also recommending approval contingent upon the DEP sewer planning module approval and the satisfaction of that.
Or I think the way it's written in the letter says providing evidence that's not necessary. Like in this case, we don't, it has existing capacity.
Is that it? What's the?
Accept that in second.
So we have a motion and a second. Motion by Randy, second by Jansen. Any discussion on that motion?
The audio is going in and out a little bit. Was that also, that motion contingent on, um, compliance with the county letter?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. And then also satisfaction of the township staff on the traffic report?
That should be, yeah, that should be. It should be, Colin was going to address that with that. I didn't include it in the motion, but I guess we should.
Yes, please.
We missed the comments in the letter.
Sure. Yep, we'll do that.
So thank you, Sarah. So Randy did amend his motion to include the road Meller engineer letter comment on the transportation impact study. Any further discussion on the modified motion, which we'll now vote? So Jansen, Randy,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
and I myself, so unanimous, so moved.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item under new business is plan 2024-10 Pine Manor House, 2165 New Holland Pike, waiver of land development. Good evening.
Good evening.
As you're doing, come forward, identify yourself, and
I'm Chris Strom, Strom Contracting. I'm representing Pine Manor Homes at 2165 New Holland Pike. We're proposing it's a addition, but basically an enclosed stairway. It's sold with the boards and other the weather. We're looking, it's a 170 square feet area. It's already impervious. And we're gonna reduce, there's some things we're taking away. So we're actually gonna take about 20% of that new. That's our existing service, but about 20% will be taken away from 170 new square feet. We're looking for a waiver of land development. I am working with Matthew Mack Engineering on a stormwater plan for that project. So basically I'm here to apply for a waiver of land.
this is. Looking at it, as you said, it's for internal access between two floors.
Correct.
It appears there are doorways to the outside. Is that for, because the front walkway comes around that grand, comes around, and then there's a doorway, it appears out the back.
Yes.
Is that for emergency or not?
No, I don't. So, the architect, we're proposing it as, it's not a means of that or egress, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, because the big note says it, but then a little thumbnail shows the doorways
Correct.
towards the front of it, at least that one.
Yeah, there is two other means of exit or whatever you want to call it on the first floor, the upper floor. And then the second or the lower level, there's for emergency exit.
But just concerned as far as was saying it's just 17 bedrooms. And just from fire and panic, if you had sufficient exits in case of emergency, et cetera.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
doesn't eliminate an exit that might be essential for the exit.
well, the exits will still be, when you go out the existing exits there going into the addition, there's still gonna be exits out to the outside on both floors. So it's not blocking off, from being able to go outside the building. So,
We do have a review from township staff. The property's an assisted living facility with approximately 17 bedrooms. As you said, proposing a 15 by 15 building addition, so only 225 square feet, basically.
it's actually only 15, like and a half by 11, so I'm not sure. But it's still, it's very close to that anyhow.
Addition, as you said, is used for a stairway. No additional living space or added. No change in use on the property, no zoning concerns. The staff are in support of the waiver request. Any comments from planning commission?
Project seems to be done with the safety of the residents in mind. Should be talked about here.
I have a quick
Sarah?
question.
Jason? Yes.
Sorry. Is there another way is there 2 stories here? Are we talking about like a second? And then is there another access for them to get down prior to this or no?
There's a staircase. It's a very steep staircase. And it's kind of not, I don't know how to explain it, but it's not in a common area, if that makes sense. And actually, come to think of it, I think that staircase just goes outside on it's inside on the second floor. I could be wrong with this, but I think it goes actually right outside on the lower level. It's the way the building sits on the property is the lower level is on the back end of the building is like totally open to the parking lot. But on the second level, the front of the building is open to that level.
I gotcha. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the front is at ground level for the first floor. It's almost the basement is open or the downstairs is open to the back and the garage.
Yeah, the full length of the building,
The
yeah.
parking lot's all across the back.
Correct, yes.
Any other comments? Any comments from the general public? I look for a motion.
And find that home at 2165 and all that. The waiver of the developments as proposed.
I have a motion to approve the waiver. Do I have a second?
I will second.
We'll give it. So we have the motion by Jansen, the second by Jason. Jansen? Randy? Sarah?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
And I for myself, so unanimous, so approve the waiver. For sure. for briefing item or for new business. Next, or briefing items. Line 2024 Weiss Market
Yes,
in Bridgeport.
yes, so, the White Market located at 1631 Old Pike. Has submitted a land development application for a Weiss Gas and Go. So they're proposing a canopy, 5 or 6, Spencer Islands, and a kiosk. So it's a review, and you'll see this at a later.
I assume they're aware of the Bridgeport plan
Yes.
and coordinating
They are, yes.
and including any appropriate
Yeah.
measures.
Yeah, staff has had a conversation with them regarding future plans for this area. However, that's not occurring right now, so they are moving forward with this plan.
Any questions? Business included in your pack was request for proposals for the East Lampeter Township comp plan. So I don't know, we need a discussion, or I mean, a presentation from Colin.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it is, like it says, a request for proposals for us to update our comprehensive plan. Tara, I believe, is online with us. So yeah, we're looking for any comments, anything we may have missed, or you feel that we should add to make this RFP complete.
So you see, our comp plan was last done in 2003, so doing it every 5 years, we do the math, I think we have 4 times that, 21 years, but we've
Well,
had,
that's not exactly correct, Daryl.
I was gonna say, Tara, no, I saw you smiling. but
I'm
we're all-
going to correct you on that one. So the Conestoga Valley Comprehensive Plan was 2023. That is correct. The Growing Together Plan was 2007. Did I say 2023? That was 2003. Sorry about that. 2007 was Growing Together Plan. And if you all know, the East Lampeter Township is covered under 2 comprehensive plans. Then in 2013, we began the process of looking at each of those comprehensive plans on a regular basis to ensure that we were still meeting the goals, objectives, the vision, and the mission of those to both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to meet our obligations under the municipalities planning code.
Thank you. You said about what I was gonna say, but thank you, you said it better.
Or did the township reconfirm the Growing Together in 2017?
We did not.
I asked only because I know the city of Lancaster did. Somewhat reluctantly, but they did.
No, we did not, Randy, and that's because we were doing the regular reviews of the comprehensive plans and taking that to both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to make sure that what staff was putting out there as a review was correct in the eyes of others, not just in staff's eyes. So we're really looking for a recommendation to the board as to whether or not we should move forward with the request for proposals, or if there's changes needed to the request for proposals. You know, we started the housing plan last year as a precursor to the comprehensive plan being started this year. Daryl's right. It is time that we redo this and that we have one comprehensive plan to follow. At the same time, we're keeping all of those relationships viable and continuing efforts with all of the municipalities involved in both the LA
Still there, Tara?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Did I
the
lose
connection,
you?
the connection's a little jumpy. The other part was just in support of staff. I don't know how they've done it all, but, and you can see at the end of the second paragraph, there's also been, official map was done, overhaul the zoning ordinance, the Bridgeport plan, the Conestoga Valley Regional Park and Rec plan. And the most recent, the housing needs study, which took a lot of time and effort and pieces, all these pieces will be instrumental in moving forward with updating the comp plan. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
We haven't just been sitting on our hands back there.
Exactly. I was going to say, there was no grass growing under them. They were moving, pretty fluently during that whole time with a lot of other important studies that at the time were critical and important to the township.
All right, I have 2 suggestions for you to consider.
Absolutely.
Under the selection criteria, there's a suggestion that you might want to include references in the selection criteria. Or is there an expectation?
That's the middle of the 3rd page for those that may want to follow, Randy.
Or is,
Yep.
and I don't know.
So references of other projects, Randy?
References for you to contact. So if you're contacting references, the validity of those references that they would list. I don't know if you need percentage, but if you did, I'd say I would change the ability to create creative suggestions to 15 and add 5% to the references. And I know on the format of your proposal, you have a limitation on the number of pages. So my recommendation for that is to also add references as a form of the proposal. I didn't see that listed anywhere that you were requesting references. Maybe that's part of the exclusion as well. So you had the exclusion for resumes, maybe you make an exclusion to the 10-page for references.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Just as a comment and then a question, as you can see, the timeline, proposals are due end of June, June 28th. And then at the end, on the last page, interviews are July, August, and anticipate starting in mid-September of this year. If Tara or Colin could briefly indicate the role the Planning Commission will be playing in this process as it moves forward.
Yeah, so in the selection and steering committee, there is a spot for a planning commission member. So as soon as we have the RFP out on the street, then we'd look for the planning commission to have a recommendation for one of your members to be part of that selection and steering committee. So that's your next meeting.
Anything else? Reference to the comp plan. So thank you for your comments, Randy.
I'm happy to answer them.
So if not, as indicated at the beginning, just be a recommendation from the planning commission to move forward with the request for proposals. I guess it could be a motion or just a consensus.
Motion to move forward.
So, if somebody would like to make a motion to move forward the request for proposals, subject to Randy's comments.
I'll move that motion.
Do we have a motion by Randy? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Jason seconds. We'll do the vote. Jansen,
Aye.
Randy,
Aye.
Sarah,
Hi.
Jason,
Aye.
I from myself, so 5 in favor. So moved that the request for proposals is blessed by the planning commission with the comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under other business is the East Lampeter Township Housing Implementation Priorities. There were 2 items included in our packet. The memo of 4:30 to the Board of Supervisors, and the second memo was dated 5/2 to the Board of Supervisors on the housing study implementation. I'm not sure included tonight, which Colin just got today and added to that electronic packet that you had. There was a 514 memo to the Board of Supervisors. I don't know if Sarah and Jason, you've seen that. It's the housing study priorities. I don't know if you can.
Yes.
Or if not, you can pull it up. They've taken, the supervisors met last week and had a discussion on it, on the implementation of the housing study. And based on that discussion, they were looking for a little more specifics, which would be this housing study priorities.
Daryl, do you mind if I jump in here?
So I was going to say, Tara, if you want to take this and walk us through, I was just giving Sarah and Jansen, who are remote, zoomed in, chance to get that document, which you'll probably refer to.
I will. So the 4:30 memo is from township staff, and that was to the Board of Supervisors. And then the 5/2 memo is from Supervisor Demi to the Board of Supervisors. When the Board of Supervisors adopted the housing plan, they adopted all but the implementation section of the plan, as they felt that there were other opportunities that could be utilized to implement that plan. The implementation section of the housing plan, as well as coming up with other priorities that could be utilized to move forward with the implementation. They discussed all of those options that both Supervisor Demi and township staff put forward, and then asked township staff to prioritize those, as well as bring them to the Planning Commission. So that the Planning Commission had an idea of what township staff felt we could accomplish. We prioritized, and that's today's memo. We prioritized all of those opportunities to move implementation forward with the housing plan. And would hope that the planning commission could make a recommendation on that prioritization. So we've taken out some of the overall information and really boiled it down to what needs to happen in order to move that forward, and then what timeline we can do that in. So as Daryl just pointed out, this isn't the only thing we're doing. And so we had to really weigh the timelines as to what we really could get done in pretty much a short amount of time for some of them. So completely open to moving some of these around if the planning commission feels that they should be a different priority as a recommendation, again, to the Board of Supervisors. So if you'll allow me to very quickly go through, the highest priority is the creation or promoting creation of the accessory dwelling units, which are allowed with the single family dwellings. We've had this allowance in our zoning ordinance since 2018, but I can name on one hand probably all of the accessory dwelling units that have come in since then. It just has not been taken advantage of in the zoning ordinance the way we thought it would. Part of that is from the issue that a subdivision and land development plan was necessary for a second dwelling unit on a parcel per the MPC. That has changed with the amendment of the subdivision and land development ordinance. Something that Supervisor Demi brought forward was accessory units in the agricultural zone, and we agreed in part with that. As township staff, we agreed that any property that's less than 10 acres, so not a farm, should be allowed to have that accessory dwelling unit as well, because those properties do serve as a single family dwelling. However, when we get into the agricultural zoning district, there are other provisions under special exceptions that allow for a second dwelling unit that we really need to consider how to rewrite those pieces of the ordinance ended on a property. We need to have an or choice here, not a both choice. And then there's yet another provision to allow the multifamily in the R2 zoning district. I believe that was just an oversight in the update of the zoning ordinance. We've had a request for increased heights in the mixed use district, and we actually figured or determined that that's a positive that we can move forward with at this time, because that is our higher density district, and that is on a bus route. It has direct services, it's got public sewer and water services. So it is an area that we should consider with higher building heights. In addition, reducing the parking requirements on bus routes in the mixed use district is also a positive thing. We have, as the housing study showed, we have a large number of workers coming into East Lampeter Township for the service and retail jobs that we have along the Route 30 corridor. Not enough housing for those individuals. And so reducing the parking requirements along the bus route will help to increase the housing opportunities. And then reducing the lot areas for multifamily and townhouses. We did this in the 2016 ordinance, but we do, after Colin took a look at surrounding municipalities and found that we're still a little high. So looking at reducing those even further. And then removing the requirement of special exception for multifamily housing in the village zoning districts is one less step a developer would have to do in the planning process. And so we think that's a positive as well. So that's first and second priorities. And then the third priorities are accessory dwelling units with religious uses. and adding multifamily dwellings to the C2. Those two things are going to require some text revisions that are a little more extensive than we can do by September of this year. And so we are looking to take a little bit more time with those to make sure we get them right and we talk to the right people about how they should be done. And that goes along with the accessory dwellings on a farm that I talked about earlier. And then we want to continue all of the relationships we have with developers. And you saw one tonight, and I'm sorry, I missed part of that conversation, but with the developer of Rockvale. So the other one is Hyde Associates and developing vacant parcels in the business park to get closer to that allowance for residential of 3,700 units in the business park. And then we need to establish relationships with organizations that can help to manage affordable housing units. That's not something that the township has the staffing capacity to take on at this point in time. And then one final thing that Supervisor Demi brought up is the nuisance apartment ordinance. We have a nuisance hotel ordinance, and that was established this year. It's reduced the number of calls to certain hotels, and it's allowed the police chief to work with those hoteliers on resolving issues that are occurring and requiring the police services. So establishing a similar type of ordinance for apartments was one of Supervisor Demi's suggestions as well. Now, there are a few things that we're not moving forward with at this time. We just don't have either the legislation in place at the state level or the staffing ability to move these types of programs forward. And that would be the single family dwelling inventory, a rental inspection program, and a tiny home community.
Tara, what is the single family dwelling inventory?
So the housing study found that there are some single family homes out there that could really use some assistance. And I mean that in the fact that they are maybe run down or they're in a vacant state. And so having that inventory of where those are and what's needed to get them back into the market is something that the housing study recommended.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, I believe it was about 146 units, but it doesn't provide us with new units. It's units that are out there, but we would in some cases have to go find them.
My tendency is that there are older homes that have shown the wear of age as much as, I'd say, neglect. It's not necessarily neglect, it's just the age, and the home is deteriorated, and it's an expense.
So if the Planning Commission has any other opportunities, we're willing to hear those as well and consider them.
Just for my clarification, and you went through it, Tara, but the accessory dwellings under the second priority is for agricultural sites that are less than 10 acres.
At this point,
Is ECHO allowed on those properties? Are ECHO facilities allowed there? Because then the other says for a farm, which would be an agricultural area, and there it's an either or. You can have the accessory dwelling or an ECHO dwelling, but not both. It's an either or.
Yeah, the ECHO units are allowed in a lot of districts, Daryl. And so it would be an or. And we do have some individuals that have the ECHO units and they change them into accessory dwelling units. So they pay the sewer tapping fee after their loved one has passed, and then they turn it into an apartment for someone that may or may not be related to them. But in any case, it would be an or.
I was just trying to understand, the only difference is the 10 acres.
Yeah, with a farm, as I mentioned, there's another option to have a second dwelling on a farm under special exception. And then through the zoning ordinance, with every 25 acres, you have the option of having a subdivision or residence. So there's multiple things that come into play when you get over the 10 acres that really need to be considered further before moving that type of ordinance amendment.
There, right now, that in the priority memo, the affordable units are kind of defined with the density bonus. I think there's obviously an expectation that the accessory dwelling units will be affordable units, at least we hope. But I would encourage trying to move that earlier than March 2026 to create that relationship. I mean, it's a fairly simple monitoring process of requesting rental agreements and monitoring those rental agreements to make sure they meet the median income requirements. I understand that's not a staff capacity right now, but finding an organization that might be willing to do that for a fee, or even just based on their own mission, you might find someone that would be willing to do that. Because my concern is the study called for 350 affordable units in 5 years, and I don't see anything that's really going to get you to that with confirmation, unless you have some way of monitoring that side of it. So just something to, I'm not suggesting you change the priorities, but maybe the timeline for that one, if it's possible to move it into 2025 someplace. Because I think that's,
Randy, that's an excellent point. It is. And I should have prefaced the timelines with those are anticipated end times.
Yeah.
So having things in place by those times. So I apologize for not stating that up front. But I do hear your point. The sooner we can get to it, the better.
maybe you could find people that would volunteer for the township to do that. Monitoring.
You know, that.
Are you raising your hand?
I have to talk to a person I live with first, but it's a possibility. Just something to think about.
I'm writing that down, you know.
I know you are.
Kara doesn't forget.
Okay.
Hey, Tara, I got a question for you. The rental
Sure.
inspection program, could you just tell me, like, what would that be, like new stuff going on, like in the future, or like what would that entail? What would be the
That would
idea behind
actually,
that?
yeah, that would actually entail any rental unit in the township going through an inspection program. And that's typically done when there's a move out or move in situation. There are some programs that do a yearly inspection, so it can vary. The unfortunate part of those types of programs is they don't pay for themselves, and the cost is generally passed on to the renter. If you looked at the housing study, our renters, 41% of them are already cost burden. So to even put $10 more for a rental inspection on top of the rents at this point in time is just going to further cost burden our renters in the township. So now there are the good parts of those types of programs is the quality of the apartments that are available for rent in the township, because someone's putting eyes on them. And, we aren't doing that right now. But what I can say is that we've had the IPMC in place for a number of years, that the International Property Maintenance Code, and anyone can lodge a complaint against a rental property or a hotel. And they can do that through calling the township at this point. And Colin and his team will investigate what's going on in that particular situation. What I can tell you is since 2016, we've had 14 that have been related to apartments. Now, some resulted in some significant issues that were abated, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not a whole lot of complaints for apartments in East Lampeter Township.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Tara, do you think part of the lack of complaints is people don't know that there's an opportunity to make those complaints?
That may be part of it. Absolutely, Sarah.
I'm just wondering, is there anything on the website or anything about that?
So we did have a complaint form on the website for as long as I could remember, since we adopted the IPMC. We put a complaint form out there pretty quickly. We recently took that complaint form off of the township website at the direction of the Board of Supervisors, because we had a notice on there that we were collecting this information, and they did not want that notice on there. So we've had a number of complaints come through as anonymous because the tenant doesn't want to be kicked out by the landlord. And so we send them to, we give them the tenant landlord rights guidance book that we have. And then, they have sought other means of abating the issues that are plaguing them at their particular location. So one of the things that the board has asked us to do is look at having an online form that they fill out online, and it goes directly to an email, and which Colin and I would have access to. So we are working on that.
Yeah, thanks.
And the other thing, Sarah, is there's only so many things that the IPMC covers, right? It doesn't cover everything. A lot of people call and say, look, I have bed bugs, or, I've got roaches, and those things aren't covered under the IPMC. There's other things that are, but they're more serious. My sewer doesn't work, and I don't have heating. Those things are covered, but there's other things that may be out there, but they're just not covered under the code.
More, I had mentioned, and it probably takes some discussion, and I'm a novice on this, about even like a self-evaluation form. I think Randy has some better experience and knowledge on that, but even if there's checklists out there for anything and everything. There's a checklist, what to pack when you go on vacation and things, and just maybe, and I don't know what, I've not seen the form Tara's talked about, for it, but it's kind of a catch-22 or a double-edged sword. If the tenant complains, and they have to fix it, their rent's going to go up or they're going to be evicted, is I think their concern. So they don't want to pay more. They may take the conditions in stride with maybe less expensive rent. And so if you make comments, it's going to cost you. And it's hard to tell what their thought process is. With Tara mentioned earlier with the hotels, there were some serious issues that got fixed, but the tenants, that from what little knowledge I have of it, really weren't concerned. It was home, and that's the home they knew. But some of them were kind of permanent residents in some of our hotels. But they had a place, a roof over their head. And that was about it. And the conditions were deplorable in some cases. But that was home. So it's hard to tell. I think Randy had mentioned, yeah, the kind of self-evaluation by the landlord, as Randy knew, is not efficient, doesn't work. To some thought, I was just saying, well, if there was a checklist or something out there, it would get them on notice of what the issue might be if and when this ever happened, that they would have an inspection performed. So they had some preparation, so they weren't blindsided when you walk in with 10 or 20 or 50 items that we're gonna look at if the time ever comes. And I think it's the
Daryl,
same.
that works with,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, and some as you hear many times in the paper, these are absentee landlords with some of these properties. They don't live local. They're not even in the state in some cases. And may not be familiar with what's required in this area to some degree because they don't know, and to some degree may not be concerned with that. But anyway. Tara, thank you.
So I think a checklist like that would work with those that actually care about their property and care about their tenant and the conditions that they're living in, and those that aren't necessarily going to pick up that checklist or search for that checklist online to go through it.
Yeah.
They're going to wait till a program like this is in place and then get the list and work to abate the issues so that they can get a new tenant or continue a tenancy.
And the only thing I would tell you to think about, if you're putting that form online again, to add a one pager that lists what the IPMC covers and focusing on safety issues. So when the city first did their inspection program, we focused on heating systems, electrical systems, and smoke detectors. There were a lot of other issues in property maintenance and peeling paint. Those were the ones we focused on initially until we got through all of the units within the city. But having that list, if someone's going to file a complaint, it would be helpful for them to know these are the kinds of things that are covered by the International Property Maintenance Code, just so they can see it. Doesn't have to go into the detail of each one, but just listing furnace, HVAC system, plumbing, electrical, those kinds of things might at least give them a better idea of what they could actually file a complaint about.
That's a good idea.
Just a minor thing, Tara. As I read through it on the second page under reducing lot area requirements, I think there's a word missing at the end of the first line. We're missing multifamily. BH zoning districts for multifamily from 3,500 to 25. And then townhouse from 3,750.
Oh, yeah.
Multifamily, it's just missed there.
Daryl, in another life, you were an editor.
Another life.
Already talked, I did a lot of proofreading and legal documents and contracts. And it was either right or wrong. So my catches that they used to proofread all of our press releases out of our office and then announcements for grants and every now and then.
It's great. It's great. I love it. It keeps me on my toes.
Yeah. Well, you're always on your toes. Any other comments, questions?
We actually want a recommendation from the planning commission Tara?
That would be great if you are all in agreement.
So based on our discussion and Tara's copious notes, we can look for a motion in reference to the 514 memo on housing study priorities.
I'll make a motion that the staff memo dated 5/14/2024 with housing priorities be presented to the Board of Supervisors with the Planning Commission's acceptance. I second.
So we have the motion and we have a second by Jansen. We'll have the vote. Sarah,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Jansen,
Aye.
Randy,
Aye.
and myself, unanimous on the recommendation to move forward to the supervisors for our discussion.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other business comments?
What?
If not, there's only one item left on the agenda, and that's adjournment.
Motion that we adjourn.
So Jansen, have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And Jason seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I assume that was a unanimous, so I didn't do the individual.
It's great to see you all.
Thank you.
Jason, Sarah.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.